Europe entered the most dangerous phase of war, and no leader has the guts to stop the disaster. The war in Europe has reached its most dangerous point, and I'll tell you why. Putin's chance to make a deal and pull out his territories was thrown away in Trump's last attempt to end the war, and now neither Russia nor NATO has any choice but to attack and escalate until someone gives up. That's exactly why Russia has just invaded two NATO countries' territories, not with drones, but with a manned fleet. The challenge is on. Either NATO finds the courage to activate the alliance's war article, or it shows Putin he can do whatever he wants in Europe. Putin pushes into NATO territory, turning the conflict into a point of no return between armed giants. Besides invading alliance territory, Putin pushed into new cities, destroyed infrastructure, and fired missiles undetectable by patriots in response. The United States reacted by sending long-range weapons to Kyiv and cutting off Russian oil. Moscow responded by testing nuclear warheads. The world held its breath, fearing the next step. Diplomacy is over, and every move is now a game of nerves. One mistake, one wrong calculation, and the planet could enter the dawn of apocalypse. Everything suggests the world is closer to that point of no return, like when the German dictator of World War II invaded European countries. The world holds its breath as missiles, madness, and pride drive humanity to a point of no return. If everyone knows the cost of a nuclear war, why do leaders keep pushing the world to the brink? Has fear lost its value, or are they betting the enemy will back down first? What do you think? Just a reminder, this report is based on news from Sky News, The New York Times, BBC, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, Sputnik, RT News, and Telegram. But before we get into the video, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Your subscription means a lot and helps you stay updated on every story about the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more. Moscow announced it had taken Pavlivka and Ivanivka, consolidating its advance after brutal fighting. The Kremlin claims it's a response to Ukrainian attacks on civilians, but experts say Putin wants to prove he still sets the rules and that no one will stop Russia's advance. In retaliation, Russia struck Ukraine's power infrastructure again, leaving entire regions in darkness. Kyiv confirmed 6 victims, including 2 children. The explosions hit civilian neighborhoods, making it clear Moscow has no plans to ease up. Ukraine's Air Force reported more than 400 drones and nearly 30 missiles launched in a single night, even intercepting most of them, what slipped through destroyed power plants and energy grids. It's the kind of attack that shows how exhausted and vulnerable the country is. Ukrainian Minister Svetlana Hrinchuk accused Russia of deliberately attacking the power system. According to her, Russians even bomb repair crews to ensure total chaos. The goal, she says, is to leave the country without light and without hope. Kyiv faced another night of horror. Drones crashed into residential neighborhoods, hitting houses and even a kindergarten. Sirens wailed for hours, and the sound of explosions echoed through the city, reminding everyone that air defense can no longer handle the growing war. Moscow strikes, Kyiv strikes back, and each explosion feels like the first page of World War III. Ukraine responded with surgical strikes on Russian territory. Targets: a weapons factory in Mordovia and a refinery in Dagestan. The explosions caused fires and mass evacuations. The message is clear. Kyiv won't wait anymore. It's taking the war to Moscow. Vice Admiral Vladimir Zelensky announced that reservists have been mobilized to protect refineries and pipelines. The decision shows Russia's fear of new Ukrainian long-range drone attacks. The Kremlin is starting to defend itself within its own borders. Putin oversaw a nuclear exercise involving all strategic forces, land, sea, and air. Yars and Sineva missiles and simulated warheads were launched. The message is simple: Russia's arsenal is ready, and anyone who doubts it will get a terrifying reminder. The Kremlin swears the drill is routine, but no one believes it. Analysts see the maneuver as a direct message to the West. Russia wants to show it remains strong, even under sanctions and isolation, a gesture of strength and of threat. The attacks on civilians and the missile escalation mark the most dangerous point of the war. The next step could involve strategic weapons capable of changing everything. Has the moral limit already been crossed, or is there still something that can stop Moscow? The planet now lives under sirens, waiting for the first nuclear button to be pressed. The United States approved the use of long-range missiles by Ukraine, removing Washington's last barrier. With this, Kyiv can strike targets inside Russia, something Putin considered a red line. The war has just reached a new level. The decision came along with new sanctions on Russian energy and banks. Trump said he would choke Putin's war machine and promised to punish any country helping Moscow evade sanctions. But how far is he willing to go to prove his strength? Putin replied that Russia will never bow down and accused Washington of pushing the planet toward direct confrontation. The Kremlin warned that attacks with Western weapons would be treated as actions by NATO. It's the kind of warning that usually comes right before an explosion. The European Union wants to use frozen Russian assets to fund Ukraine's war. Zelensky is pushing for it to happen soon. Moscow threatens to respond with asymmetric measures and calls the idea international theft. The financial game has become ammunition. The cancellation of the summit between Trump and Putin buried the last hope for dialogue. Hours later, Russia and Ukraine launched their most intense attacks in weeks. Without negotiation, the scenario is clear. The world is once again ruled by the power of missiles. The war escalates. Moscow tests warheads and NATO responds. No nation can control the chaos anymore. Reports suggest Ukraine will receive up to 150 Gripen jets, bought with frozen Russian assets. If confirmed, it will be the largest air expansion since the war began, and a true nightmare for Moscow. In a new meeting with European leaders, Zelensky asked for more long-range weapons, saying Russia still controls the skies. He said that without strategic missiles, there's no balanced defense. Will the West keep risking everything to sustain Kyiv? Trump got tougher again. He banned Russian oil contracts and imports. He said the goal is to stop funding the war and force Putin to accept a peace deal under US supervision. But since when is peace imposed with more sanctions? A few hours later, the United States suspended direct contact between Trump and Putin. Sources say the American president is frustrated with the Russian leader's lack of action and is already considering military options. When diplomacy turns into silence, what comes next? The growing distance between Trump and Putin creates the biggest risk of a nuclear power rupture in decades. The next steps from Washington and Moscow will decide whether the world faces a direct war, or if there's still a chance to avoid disaster. The United States breaks the last barrier, and Putin answers with threats that could ignite the planet. 2 Russian planes violated Lithuania's airspace. It was enough to put the entire region on high alert. NATO called it a deliberate provocation and made it clear another incident could trigger an immediate military response. Hours later, NATO fighters intercepted new Russian flights over Estonia. The jets stayed 12 minutes in enemy airspace before pulling back. Analysts say Moscow is testing the alliance's reaction time, like playing with fire just to feel the heat. NATO said the incursions were contained without direct confrontation, but warned of hybrid threats involving espionage, sabotage, and drones. Officials say this pattern is the same one seen before the invasion of Ukraine, and that changes everything. Lithuania's president reacted by saying the country will not tolerate aggression. He promised to act alongside allies and called any new violation a hostile act. Troops are already on alert at bases near Kaliningrad, ready for the worst. British military sources confirmed that NATO has reinforced radars, drones, and F-35 fighters in the Baltic states. The atmosphere is one of absolute tension. A single miscalculation could turn the next overflight into an open war between heavily armed powers. The line between defense and annihilation is gone, as long-range missiles become the new diplomatic language. Estonian authorities confirmed that Russia's MiG-31 jets flew at extremely low altitude over Narva, near the border. The sonic boom shattered windows and spread panic among civilians. No one doubts it anymore. Moscow is testing NATO's nerves, one flight at a time. Russia's defense ministry denied everything, claiming they were training routes. NATO immediately countered, saying Moscow is timing Western defense responses. Training? Or a rehearsed provocation to see how far they can go. NATO released radar images showing 2 Russian aircraft inside Lithuanian airspace. The spokesperson was blunt. Every second of these incursions is calculated. The message is clear. If a radar locks on the wrong target, the world could wake up at war. The Pentagon announced maximum surveillance over Russian movements. It stated that any attack on a NATO country would trigger Article 5, meaning war against all allies. A heavy reminder, one spark in the Baltics could set the planet on fire. The Baltic has become the new epicenter of global tension. Analysts warn that a mistake between fighter jets could turn the air conflict into nuclear war within minutes. Everything is ready. It just takes someone pressing the wrong button. Planes and drones cross borders. Each minute could turn into an explosion of total war in Europe. A British military report reignited fears of a Third World War. It predicts Russia will violently test NATO within 4 years. Generals warn that Moscow is rebuilding its conventional and nuclear forces for an inevitable confrontation. The Kremlin responded by saying Washington is creating panic to justify billions in defense spending. Yet at the same time, it increased missile tests and simulated electronic attacks on Western satellites. If that's not war preparation, then what is? Putin once again declared that Russia will never bow down and accused Trump of following the path of war. The tone escalated, diplomacy vanished. The talk of peace turned into threats. And every word from both men sounds like the prelude to conflict. Russian sources confirm that Moscow has begun the largest nuclear exercise since the Cold War. Tu-95 bombers, Borei submarines, and Yars missiles were activated. The message is terrifying. Russia wants to prove it can still destroy the world in minutes. At the same time, NATO is conducting its own nuclear exercise with B-2 bombers and F-35 fighters in Eastern Europe. 2 powers testing warheads in the same period, too much of a coincidence. Any technical error now could end everything in seconds. The world watches Moscow and Washington like people waiting for a disaster that's already begun. Analysts say these maneuvers are direct messages. Moscow and NATO want to show strength and readiness. The danger is that this military show could turn into reality if a radar miscalculates. At this point, one misinterpreted missile is enough. The US government called Russia's actions irresponsible nuclear intimidation. The Pentagon responded by sending submarines to the North Atlantic and raising readiness levels. The whole world understood we're one step away from something no one can control. On Russian TV, Putin appears leading missile tests. Propaganda portrays him as the leader of a besieged nation. The message remains the same. Russia is surrounded by enemies trying to destroy its sovereignty. Fear has now become a political weapon. Experts say diplomacy hasn't been this tense since the 1980s. With no dialogue and nuclear treaties collapsing, the planet is plunging into a new arms race. The difference is that this time, no one seems to want to stop. With daily provocations and no direct communication channels, the planet is in countdown mode. A confrontation could soon stop being talk and become reality. The question is, who will take the first step toward disaster, Trump or Putin? NATO stands one step away from direct conflict with Russia. A single error could end everything. A historian specializing in nuclear weapons revealed a list of 15 American cities that would be Moscow's first targets. The revelation caused panic in the United States, especially after the Russian tests and the recent American strike against Iran. According to researcher Alex Wellerstein, Russia's plan would be to neutralize US retaliation by hitting bases and command centers before major cities. Smaller groups would focus on symbolic targets and populated areas to spread fear and global chaos. The cities of Great Falls, Montana, and Cheyenne, Wyoming top the list. Both host intercontinental missile silos. A single strike in these regions could wipe out hundreds of ready-to-launch warheads, leaving the United States defenseless. In the state of Utah, Ogden and Clearfield would also be top targets. Hill Air Force Base operates part of the U.S. nuclear arsenal. A strike there would affect more than 120,000 people in seconds, the kind of number no country wants to calculate. Shreveport, Louisiana appears as a likely Iranian target due to the B-52 bombers stationed there. A nuclear missile over that base would wipe out everything within a 20-kilometer radius. The estimate is nearly 200,000 killed instantly. Diplomacy is dead, and every nation now waits its turn on the nuclear target list. Honolulu, in Hawaii, is another critical point because it hosts U.S. naval and air bases in the Pacific. Its position between the United States and Asia makes it one of the first targets in a conflict with China or North Korea. The tropical paradise could become a war zone. Omaha, in Nebraska, is also on the list because it hosts Offutt Air Force Base, part of the United States Nuclear Command. During the Cold War, it was the heart of the retaliation system. Today, it remains the brain behind any American atomic response. Colorado Springs, in Colorado, would be struck for hosting the North American Aerospace Defense Command. Analysts warn that destroying this base would leave the United States blind to a nuclear attack. A single hit and the entire country would be undefended. The historian also cites major metropolises like New York, Los Angeles, and Chicago. These attacks would have symbolic value to cause shock, paralyze governments, and collapse the global financial system. It would be the final blow to the West's structure. Experts warn that provocations between Trump and Putin could turn into real tragedy. If the next missile is not just a test, the world will witness the start of the worst catastrophe of the modern era, and no one will be able to say they were not warned. Moscow and NATO test warheads as the planet counts seconds while two empires flirt with extinction. Attacks, sanctions, and threats keep multiplying as global peace hangs by a thread. Russia, the United States, and NATO continue playing a game that's already out of control. The question is no longer if the war will erupt, but when and how it will start. While cities are under attack and nuclear bases arm themselves, diplomacy has been buried. Trump and Putin are waging a war of words that always ends in explosions. With each statement, the planet takes one more step toward chaos no one will be able to contain. Analysts say the risk of direct conflict between powers is the highest since the Cold War. Europe has become a constant alert zone, and the oceans are filled with submarines armed with warheads ready to launch in minutes. The doomsday clock is ticking again. The entire world watches, unsure what the next target will be. Capitals prepare, alliances crumble, and humanity relives the fear it swore to never feel again, the fear of nuclear annihilation. History seems ready to repeat itself, but much worse. Nuclear war is no longer a threat, it's routine. History itself now walks toward extinction. If everyone knows the price of a nuclear war, why do world leaders keep pushing the planet to the edge? Has fear lost its value, or are they betting the enemy will back down first? What do you think? Thanks so much for sticking around until the end of the video. You're awesome, and I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed yet, make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any updates on the raging nations. And don't forget to give this video a thumbs up to help this project grow even more.